Today in Matt's class, I'm going to show you how to do a drawing utilizing connecting edges. So in the previous video, I showed you guys the secret of using connecting edges. If you haven't seen that video yet, you should go back and watch that video. I'm pointing like this because I'm going to leave a link in the description to check out this video. You should watch that video to kind of see how this works. Now I'm going to apply that technique to my figure drawing. So I grabbed some photo reference online of a figure, and I'm going to show you how you can use connecting edges with your line quality to just really get that awesome, exquisite, voluptuous look where even without shading, the lines just really look like they are wrapping around the figure. Here we go. All right, so first up, I'm going to put in my gesture. I'm lightly, and it's kind of hard to go lightly with a charcoal pencil, but as best I can, I'm going to go lightly. I always kind of start off with the head, and I'm trying to really look at the entire figure, and I'm going to draw the figure bigger because I've got a bigger surface here. But I also don't want to go too big, so I'm going to try to really look at the composition and try to fill up my page real estate accordingly. So I've got the head and the jaw here. It's kind of looking up. Here's the shoulder, here's the angle of the arm, coming down like so. Here's the angle here. This shoulder over here. And then the spine just kind of goes over like this. Rib cage, and then here is the pelvic bone here. Already I probably drew this too big, but we'll see. Here's this leg here. So I've got my basic skeletal structure here, and now I'm going to draw with darker lines. Already this looks pretty dark, but you'll see when I put in my more confident lines how much darker they are, and I'm really going to focus on my connecting edges. Now, this is where your lines are so important, and for me, this is not a race. So a lot of times people will just go in and they'll haphazardly really just start scribbling in their shapes, and you don't want to do that. You want to draw with grace, and you want to think about each line before you put it in. Where is it going to be darker? Where is it going to be lighter? Where are your lines thicker and more confident? And then where are the lines a little bit thinner and graceful and a little bit lighter? So to me, I often equate it to like a samurai. So for example, a samurai, if they're surrounded by 30 ninjas, the samurai won't just haphazardly swing everywhere to defeat the ninjas. The samurai will pull out the sword and just go like 3 moves calculated, and then they put their sword back, and then all of the ninjas are like cut in half and all their heads roll and they drop to the floor. Kind of the reason why I equate it to that is it's quality versus quantity. Even if it's just like a 25-minute pose, I would rather see at the end of 25 minutes 7 lines, only 7 lines, but those lines are awesome. Wow, I would rather see that than after 25 minutes, wow, it's like this complete drawing, but it's just kind of scribbled in and haphazardly like a race, and there's no race. It doesn't have to be finished, and there's no such thing as perfect, but there needs to be a grace, and quality is always going to beat quantity. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to start with the part of the head here. So I'm going to have the jaw come underneath like so. Here's where it kind of goes into the neck. So the neck is like so, and now the neck here, this line gets thin because it's not touching anything, but the shoulder and the hair here is touching. So that's going to be a connecting edge as it kind of wraps around here. There's a connecting edge of the hair. Like that. Here's the shoulder here. All right, so the hair is kind of passing here, and then the shoulder. Like this. And the hair kind of passes behind the shoulder here, so that's where your connecting edge is. That's where it's going to be thicker. Here's the deltoid kind of turning into the tricep, so it's not so much of an overlap, but it is going to get a little bit thicker there. Then here is the forearm passing behind the upper arm here. So that's going to be a connecting edge. The arm, it's kind of resting on this chair here. So where the arm hits the chair, that's a connecting edge. And then here we can see the thumb behind the forearm, so that's going to be a connecting edge there. Might have drawn this shoulder a little bit too high, but that's okay. When you're learning connecting edges, obviously you want to try to get your proportions correct, but at this stage, I'm not as concerned about proportions as I am just the line quality. The back of the hair here is going behind that shoulder. There's some hair. Where it passes behind, it's going to be thicker. Then we've got the hip coming out down here. It's passing behind the upper torso, so that's why this is going to be a thicker line here. So do you see my lines, how they get thicker and thinner as it's kind of passing around the muscles? That is going to be the secret. Hopefully you can see it also in this arm right here. You can almost feel around the arm because of where the connecting edges are. Notice how the hip kind of comes behind this area here. So this is going to be thicker here where it passes behind, and then it kind of sits into the chair. So this is going to be a thicker line here as well. Now, to help kind of illustrate what's going on here, I want to kind of erase my construction lines just a little bit because they're so dark. So I'm just going to erase some of my construction lines a little bit so you can really focus on the connecting edges. So now you can kind of see the connecting edges a little bit better, and hopefully you can kind of see how those lines are reading around the form. Now, what makes the connecting edges work, the reason why they're working, is when we draw with line, it's got this linear quality, and I talked in one of my other videos about line quality. You should watch that video if you haven't already. And the thing about line quality that's interesting is there really aren't lines in real life, and it's this abstract idea that when we draw a line around something, we just kind of know we grow up kind of understanding in society when you draw a line around something, the line isn't really there, but it's creating kind of a shape, and we understand that that's what we're looking at. So the cool thing about connecting edges, we still have line quality, but it's instantly adding shape where the lines are thicker. It's almost making like these little triangles, but those triangles exist in real life because when you look at the way things kind of fold or elbows, you know, the creases that you have here, you kind of get these little triangles of darkness where shadows get trapped. So instantly it's kind of, even though you've got a linear quality with lines around everything, you're kind of adding those shapes back in, and it's kind of moving away from the lines and moving back into shapes. In fact, here's the cool thing about connecting edges. I could go in and erase any of my light lines. I could erase those lines, just leave in the connecting edges, and watch what happens. This is really cool. So I'm gonna erase any of my thin lines, like around the shoulder here, this area where the arm is just really, it's just this thin line. I'm gonna erase that. Right here, I'm gonna erase this part of the hip where it's really thin, this part of the leg where it's thin, this part of this leg where it's thin. So watch what happens. So check that out. Now that I got rid of all the lines, all that's left is the connecting edges. And isn't that crazy how you can still see the figure? The figure's still there. That's because in real life, those connecting edges are there. And that's kind of the beauty of why the connecting edges are so important, because that really is what's kind of pushing the figure together and kind of showing the overlapping shapes and also just kind of the roundness of all the forms. That's why connecting edges are so awesome. It's so cool! I think so anyway. So that is how you can use connecting edges and infuse it into your drawing. Hear me now and believe me later.